my breath back. So our story today is set in Egypt. And for many, many years, the Israelite people have been living in Egypt. But Egypt wasn't their country. It belonged to the Egyptian people. God had made a promise to the Israelites that one day they would have a land of their own, but that hadn't happened yet. Now, a new king came to power in Egypt, and he was so worried about the number of Israelites living in the country that he wanted to put a stop to it. He was extremely unkind to the Israelites, and he enslaved many of them, making them work incredibly hard on the land. And much more shockingly, he also made a law that all baby boys born to Israelite women must be killed. So that is what was going on in Egypt around the time that Moses was born. Now, I know we've already done the rhyming Bible bit, but we're going to read the bit that's actually in the Bible now. And we're going to pick that up from Exodus 2, and it's 1 to 10, and it's on the screen for you to follow along. So, you all right, guys? You're going to listen to this bit of the story and see if you can see which bits we did in our poem one. See if you can spot them. A man from the Levi tribe married a woman from the same tribe, and she later had a baby boy. He was a beautiful child, and she kept him inside for 3 months. But when she could no longer keep him hidden, she made a basket out of reeds and covered it with tar. She put him in the basket and placed it in the tall grass along the edge of the Nile River. The baby's older sister stood off at a distance to see what would happen to him. About that time, one of the king's daughters came down to take a bath in the river while her servant women walked along the riverbank. She saw the basket in the tall grass and sent one of them out to pull it out of the water. When the king's daughter opened the basket, she saw a baby crying and felt sorry for him. She said, "This must be one of the Israelite babies." At once, the baby's older sister came up and asked, "Do you want me to get an Israelite woman to take care of the baby for you?" "Yes," the king's daughter answered. So the girl brought the baby's mother, and the king's daughter told her, "Take care of this child, and I will pay you." The baby's mother carried him home and took care of him. And when he was old enough, she took him to the king's daughter, who adopted him. She named him Moses because she said, "I pulled him out of the water." Because there are so many different types of mums and mum figures, we simply can't cover them all. So we're going to concentrate on the actions and stories of the 3 women we've just heard about. We have 3 examples of mumming here. We have Moses' biological mum, who carried Moses in her tummy for 9 months and gave birth to him. We've got the sister of Moses, whose name was Miriam. And we have the king's daughter, who became the adopted mother of Moses. But let's start with Moses' mum. Having a baby was fraught with fear and uncertainty at this time. And I expect, thank you, Moses' mum was fearful from the moment she found out she was having a baby. The whole pregnancy, she was probably wondering whether she was having a girl or a boy, and would her baby be allowed to live. And as we already know, Moses was a boy, and so she hid him. She hid him inside for 3 months. Hiding a newborn, as many of you will know, would not have been easy. Newborns might be really small, but they're really, really noisy when they cry. Every time Moses cried, his mum must have been scared that they'd be found out. She took an incredible risk for her baby son. She wasn't willing for him to be taken and killed. When she could no longer hide him, she made a reed basket, and she hid Moses in the tall grass on the edge of the River Nile. I'm not sure what her plan was. And perhaps she didn't really have one. I do know that she would have been desperate to save her son. I think as mums, we can often feel like that too when we want to protect our children or the people we care for. We don't have a plan, or we might have half a plan. We do our best for our children and hope against hope that we're making good choices for them. We do what we can with what we have, and sometimes those situations can feel quite desperate. Luckily, Moses' mum wasn't alone in these struggles. She had her daughter, and she also had God, who had a plan of his own for Moses. When we're in the thick of it, parenting-wise, it's helpful to remember that God loves our children more than we do. It's difficult to comprehend, but true nonetheless. God comes alongside us, and he'll also bring people into our lives to help us too. Maybe that mum figure in your life is one of those people. Let's think about Moses' sister next. We first hear about Miriam when we're told she stood at a distance from the reed basket in the long grass at the edge of the river to see whatever would happen to her brother. She was worried enough to do this, and I'm sure all of you brothers and sisters in this room would be about your siblings too. Is that right, guys? Is that right? Yeah. Yes, well done, Mina. That's good to know, Yoma. He's got your back. Miriam watched as the king's daughter came to bathe in the river and discover Moses in the basket. I wonder if Miriam was scared when she realized her brother had been discovered by the daughter of the man who had imposed the law that Israelite babies should be killed. I can imagine Miriam's heart leaping into her throat at what could have been an awful end to her family's attempts at protecting Moses. What Miriam witnessed, though, was the king's daughter express compassion towards her brother, not hatred. The relief must have been overwhelming, but not so overwhelming that Miriam couldn't think on her feet, because what she did next was inspired. She walked up to the king's daughter and asked her if she should go and get an Israelite woman to come and look after the baby. And of course, that woman was Moses' own mum. Miriam's actions meant that Moses would be cared for by his own mum until the daughter of the king adopted him later. Stepping in at the right time and being brave on the behalf of those that we care about, whether they're our children, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, whoever they are, can have a huge impact and make all the difference. And really, making a difference is what mumming is all about. God's plan for Moses was furthered through the actions of both his mum and his sister. God can action his purpose for all of us through people like them, and I find that rather reassuring. We've already touched on the role of the king's daughter in this story, but let's take a little closer look. The king's daughter was an Egyptian princess, and as we've already mentioned, it was her dad who hated the Israelite people so much that he made that law about killing baby boys. The king's daughter knew this, and although it doesn't say it in the story, she also took a huge risk for the sake of a child that wasn't even hers. She didn't report that she'd found an Israelite baby. Was that an offense? Was that something that would put her in danger? I don't know. Next, she went on to pay Moses' mum, an Israelite woman, to look after him for a number of years, seemingly with no one finding out. And then she actually adopted Moses as her own son and brought him up as an Egyptian prince. What a whirlwind of events. Moses had more than one mum in his life, each of whom took risks and made sacrifices so that he could live. What inspired the women in this story to do what they did? What inspires mums and mum figures all over the world to do what they do and to be essential parts of so many different lives? And the simple answer is love. Love inspires us to do crazy things. When you love someone like a mum, when you love someone as close to how God loves us as you can, you'll do almost anything in your power to care and protect and support them. And that same love will make you brave, and it will make you courageous too. Mumming is hard, and at the same time, it is a massive privilege. We are designed by a God who is love, a God who in turn designed us to love. So to be more like him, we are called to love those around us. Today, we are thinking about those in our lives who have been a mother to us in one way or another, and thanking God for them, because he's the one who designed them to mum us and place them in our lives to make a positive difference. I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to lead us in a time of prayer now.